Oh, welcome back. It's Saturday, March 17th. Um, I'm 2 days, 2 days delinquent in getting this video up, but it's going up today, so better late than never. Our topic today is the resistance potential. Okay, I'll give you a little background on this material I'm about to share with you. Early last year, and up through the summertime, I was recognizing the need for this kind of information. So I was writing articles for it and posting those on the Libertarian Enterprise, which is located at ncc-1776.org. And I was basically just discussing the components and the makeup of a wartime resistance, with the idea that, the American people are going to need this information, perhaps, if the government really does get crazy and outlaw all other avenues of peaceful redress of grievances. All right, I have never once been one of these guys that advocates, oh, we need to take up arms today and start fighting the feds tomorrow. All right. My critics, however, seem to think that that's the kind of guy I am. So, once again, up front, I'm telling you straight up, the last thing I want to see happen is for America to be turned into Baghdad. And that's going to happen if we have to go to a wartime resistance movement type posture, okay? So, you better get warm and fuzzy with the fact that if we don't get Ron Paul in this November, the likelihood that we're going to have to fight for it is going to go up astronomically. Okay? So with that said and done, let's get into the meat of this material. What is the resistance potential, and is there a resistance potential in America at this time? Okay, in order for any resistance movement to exist, there must be, in the first place, a body of people who are subjected to what they believe is an oppressive authority. Condition 1, a disaffected population. Okay, mobilization of the population into resistance formations grows out of intense popular dissatisfaction with existing social and political conditions. Usually these dissatisfactions are the results of very specific grievances. The state is perceived by its actions and its legislation as becoming indifferent to the rights of its citizens. As time goes on, the indifference becomes overt hostility towards any dissatisfaction voiced by the population. Subsequently, as the state listens to the people less, while increasing its sanctions against dissatisfaction, the more that the resistance potential rises among individuals in society. Okay, this is common sense. Would a resistance develop in a free society where official coercion has been eliminated? Would a resistance develop in a society that didn't have a disaffected population? Okay, people who are happy in their environment don't try to overthrow the government. That's the bottom line. So before any resistance potential can be detected in a given society, there must also be an increasingly oppressive political/ruling authority that is beginning to get belligerent towards its population. As the tyranny increases, so does the resistance potential. We can draw a graph to illustrate this. It looks like two smooth moving average lines on a price chart. When the tyranny line goes up, so does the line describing the resistance potential. The two move in tandem together. The one influences the other. All right, let's take a minute and look at this picture right now. Okay, that's pretty clear, isn't it? All right, condition 2, emerging hardcore tyranny as a state trend. Increasingly larger and larger segments of the population perceive the state has denied or undermined the rights of their groups, and they work to reestablish or restore those rights. The nature of the state over time is to increase its own powers while diminishing the abilities of individuals to act on their own. Okay? Let's say that again. That's an important point. The nature of the state over time is to increase its own powers while diminishing the abilities of individuals to act on their own. To accomplish this sleight of hand, the state always cloaks its activities behind the ruse of security or safety. Thus, the state increasingly restricts the liberties of individuals in favor of greater security for the people. Okay? As this trend develops, the state militarizes the police and removes any barriers that might stand in the way of employing the military against the people. This is the state's definition of security. And the passage of the NDAA on New Year's Eve really set this last trend in motion. The state militarizing the police and removing all barriers that stand in the way of employing the military against the people. That's exactly what the NDAA has done. Ultimately, in the name of national security, the state redefines peaceful protest as an act of potential terrorism against the state. Free speech zones are erected, peaceful assembly is attacked, licensed, and portrayed as a public nuisance or as a subversion of the public good. All right? With the passage on March 8th of the No Trespass Zone bill, that's exactly what they've done. And they're making it harder and harder for us to go out and say, we're sick and tired of your bullshit. And once they lock that down totally, making any kind of peaceful protest or any kind of criticism of the government a crime, then people, we've got no choice but to proceed into phase 2 of the resistance. Just remember that John F. Kennedy quote we saw earlier. Once measures such as the above are in place, the outright outlawing of peaceful revolution is in the works. And it's in the works here, people. The executive body in the state is always the tip of the spear when it comes to increasing tyranny. The executive begins making law via regulation, domestic policy, and executive orders. Along the way, inalienable rights are begun to be viewed as privileges and are therefore amendable to restriction by statute. Everything impacting the freedom of the citizen becomes a debate about the greater good and security of the people. While the state-dominated media prattles on and on about threats to the population which can only be dealt with via greater security powers to be granted to the state. God, we hear that every day, don't we? These threats are bogus oftentimes, or deliberately created by black bag functions inside the security apparatus of the state. These are known as false flag operations. In the end, the result is always the application of ever more stringent security at the expense of public liberties. This is the state on steroids. Tyranny, if it's intelligently designed, will emerge slowly in graduated steps like the income tax. You don't go to bed one night a free sovereign human being and wake up the next morning in chains with TSA gate rapers in your bedroom checking your anal cavity for plastic explosives. This march towards tyranny starts out slowly, moving like a glacier. As the tyranny becomes bolder and the population has been acclimatized to this growth of oppression as being normal, as nothing out of the ordinary, the usurpers begin stepping up the pace to totalitarianism, sprinting for the goalposts. And for God's sake, are they sprinting right now? They're going completely insane. When the tyrants decide to go all the way, figuring that the final roll-up will go without a hitch, they suddenly realize that portions of the population have been watching the rise of the police state. This segment has been planning and training and organizing covertly, waiting for the state to cross the line. And when the little tin gods do just that, they run into the brick wall of the resistance. Okay, so that's the resistance potential in a society in a nutshell, and what it means and how it's created. You cannot have a resistance potential in a society unless you also have a corresponding amount of tyranny coming down from on top, which is through the government or the local state. All right, there's no other source for resistance potential to develop. I don't care if they argue, well, in third world countries there could be warlords or something where there's no state or government. Well, there's still a coercive power on the top pushing down on the people. Okay? And in America, we're not a third world country. We're a first world nation. So a lot of the classic elements of a resistance movement, especially in the SF literature, are all geared towards dealing with that resistance movement starting in a third world nation rather than a first world nation like America. So we have to adapt this material a little for it to apply to our situation. Alright, next up we're going to be talking about the phases of the resistance. Alright, this is the 3 phases that a resistance movement usually goes through, not always. It doesn't have to go through phase 1, then phase 2, and phase 3. Alright, our situation is we're in phase 1 right now, and we are on the precipice of the cliff about to dive off into phase 2. Alright, we can still turn it around from keep it in phase 1, solve this thing through peaceful measures entirely, and we can pole vault it directly from phase 1 to phase 3. Now we're going to discuss that in the next video, so stay tuned, it's coming up soon.